Kids are fine.
I'm gonna try to ad lib until our superintendent comes back, so it's, hey, we're gonna start anyway. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out this evening. A beautiful day in May. Can we please all stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on the agenda tonight is student recognition, and as I always say, it's probably the best thing we get to do as board members. So with student recognition, I think it's time for Castoro this evening.
Yeah, Dr. Castoro, take it away.
Very much. I would agree, Mr. Madone, thank you. And, anytime we get a chance to recognize those students, thanks for a wonderful evening. So I just want to talk about briefly the group of students that we are going to recognize, and then we're going to have them come up here and join me. So when I started as the principal, one of the things that stood out was that we did not have a Lego robotic team. And that's kind of a staple in middle school. So fast forward to last year, we had an opportunity through some grant money to kind of reinstate and get a team a little bit off the ground. And we had some internal competitions. We got a chance to teach students about coding, the planning, the teamwork that goes in. We have not had a team in well over a decade. I would say probably closer to 2 decades since we've had a Lego robotics program at the middle school. So in our second year of existence, the students that we're going to call up soon finished as top 10 performers in the Long Island Championship, and were first finalists for their innovation project, which is part of that program. Their project was all about ghost power, which I learned is all about the electricity that my appliances are drawing when I'm not using them, and TV and such, and ways that we can't save power by whether it be unplugging or other devices that are involved. I could not be more proud of this group of students, the teachers that I want to have come up as well and be part of this. For everything that they've done, the work that they've done. I had a chance, they were competing in Pittsville at the Long Island Championship, and I had a chance to just kind of go see the team in action. It was absolutely incredible to see how fast they move, the coordination and the planning that you guys all put in place when you're, sort of putting that together. And then both hearing about just the presentation and how well you presented when it was time to meet those adults that can be really intimidating when you're sitting in a room and they're getting prepared to judge you. But it shows a lot about both your preparation, your dedication, your innovative thinking, and I think it also to the preparation that Mr. McLaughlin, Mrs. Toth, and Ms. Chamberlain put in with you in making sure that you guys were prepared when you got there. So as a group, there's two groups that we're going to recognize. One is groups that are a group on the team itself, and then the other group that were the finalists. So I'm going to start. I'm going to ask. We have Mr. McLaughlin and Ms. Chamberlain here. I'm going to ask them to come up and join me. They're two of the coaches for the program. They've done absolutely phenomenal work for these kids, whether it's after school, just to pop in, absolutely makes my day. I'll spend just an extra few minutes in a couple of moments embarrassing Mr. McLaughlin, which is more. I'm sure it's whether or not you're expecting them, that's too bad. But you know, really the work and setting the stage for them has been phenomenal. So we're going to start with students that were members of the team. So they participate in the club regularly, and they helped be part of and making sure that team that did go to compete was prepared. But I want to recognize them. I hope they're here with us tonight. And if you are, when I call your name, please come up. Dylan Brunig. Dylan Human. And Clyde Howe.
So, on behalf of the Board of Education, the Sayville Board of Education is pleased to present both of you with this recognition for being a member of the robotics team. We are proud of your achievement and dedication to academic excellence. I would also say that our team will be able to going into the competition, and it was really amazing, and we're just so proud of everything we've done. Really looking forward to it. Perfect. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. I don't know if there's any parents in there.
All right, guys, just hang out here for a minute. We can get that. So I'm sure parents, you're aware that there's going to be some driving involved in the upcoming weekend. But this group and our team is actually going to be competing in an invitational competition, a first Lego League invitational competition. They were invited this weekend at Liberty Science Center in New Jersey this weekend. So aside from the accolades and the recognition for your work, we also want to wish you good luck, but we know how well prepared you are and ready to go. So Ken, as I call your name, please come up and join us up here. Jaden Aurelia. Pat Plumera. Andrew Dykova. David Hernandez. James McCartney. Marion Meyer. Christopher Powers. Gavin Sachs. Gavin Wall.
So again, the Board of Education is pleased to present this certificate of recognition to all of you for being first finalist in Innovation Project Award and being one of the top 10 performances at the Long Island Championship for the first Lego League Robotics Challenge. We are so proud of your achievement and dedication to academic excellence. And again, cannot wait to see what the future has in store for all of you. Congratulations.
Before we take the picture of the group, Mr. McLaughlin, just give me 1 second. So for those of you who don't know, Mr. McLaughlin is going to be retiring at the end of the school year. When I first kind of went to Mr. McLaughlin with this idea, you know, and said, we have to figure out a way to make it happen. he said, okay, that's all I need to hear. And I'm gonna figure out a way to make this happen because it's something that he believes passionately about. I know that your children have grown so much under his tutelage and being part of this program. And as a teacher, when you're starting your career, Jim, and when you're retiring, you want to know sort of they say what's a legacy is planting seeds for a tree under which you may not sit in the shade. Turn around and take a look.
Something I'm like, ready? 1, 2, 3. Thanks.
Before you guys go, I just want to say a couple things to you. One, congratulations for your great accomplishment. Engineering, principles of robotics, these things are important fields, and I hope you continue those fields into the future when you get into high school, because there's amazing opportunities for you out there. Two, you should be very proud of yourselves because we are very proud of you too. So congratulations again to our students, our families, and to our teachers who provided this opportunity for our kids. Thank you.
I'm very happy to see that there's a young lady among us.
Congratulations, guys. Let's get them up in New Jersey. Thank you, guys.
Well, if you'd like to stay for a budget presentation, you may. Or you could go home and study for your robotics program. Thank you, everyone.
It's the same thing.
All right, that's always the greatest part of a board meeting is the student summary. Next item on our agenda tonight is a 5.01 introduction of our school board candidates. We have Dr. James Birch and Tom Cool. Which brings us to probably good part of the meeting about a review of our 23-24 school budget.
And just before we begin the review of the school budget, I just want to thank everyone for coming tonight, those of you who are in the audience, as well as anyone who's at home. We really want to make sure we're thorough in our presentation of the budget so that we can answer questions you have and make sure that when you vote, and we hope you do go out to vote because voting is one of the most democratic things you can do, whether you're voting yes or no, you have all of the accurate information. So please, if you have questions or concerns about anything you hear tonight, we really would love you to ask a question. But mostly, when we prepared this school budget, we took feedback from our parents, our students, our teachers, and our principals. We asked through surveys, what are the things we need to help our students grow and learn and make sure that our school budget supports those students. We then put the budget together with that in mind. And we use graphics on the beginning of each of our meetings. The first graphic is obviously the Sayville logo in the middle, followed by the picture of the guy looking to the stars, which is kind of a symbol of like always looking to the future to make sure that we produce the most wonderful product for our students. And then the learning curve chart, which is always trying to get the learning curves of our students and our staff off the charts so they can be successful, happy people when they leave us. So that's the goal. So even though we're talking about finances, we want to make sure that all of those finances go towards that vision of our students, of our future for them. And that it's also a budget that is prudent and fiscally responsible for our taxpayers. So with that in mind, I'd like to introduce Dr. Gerkes, who's going to go through all of the points.
Well, good evening, everyone. This is somewhat towards the end zone of the budget process for the next Tuesday being the annual trustee vote and election. And as required by the state of New York, we are having our budget hearing. The law is forced no more than 14 days and no less than 7 days before the budget vote. So let's go over what went into it, and just, so everyone knows that this presentation is online already, on the website, on board docs, so you can easily access it. And it's a little lengthy, but most of the slides you have seen at some point. Some of the requirements that we have to abide by: the budget information must be both in English and Spanish. Salary codes have to be broken down by building. There is a certain level of transparency reporting that we have to abide by. There's a 3-part budget, which is also available, and we will go through tonight. There's the administrative salary disclosure section, the budget notice, and then the New York State report cards, as you see the 4 bullets below. Not only is that on our website, but it is also available at every school building in the districts. So what affected the school budget? If you recall, in December, I put this slide up, and I'm putting this slide back up from December because really not much has changed, not much has shifted. At the time, 6% was the rate of inflation for the metropolitan area. Food prices were one of the primary drivers of that inflation number, as were energy prices. As we all know, the cost of goods and services were significantly higher, and our contractual obligations were some of the stressors on the budget. And unfortunately, at the time, I think it was probably within a day of the first presentation with this, we found out that our health insurance cost increase was going to be record breaking. On the revenue side, we were under the hold harmless provision, and this is before any sort of state aid release. There were no significant increases. Our tax-based growth factor, the number of newer properties that could be added to the tax roll, was pretty low. Declining enrollment, we have to maintain our reserves because of our fiscal standing, our fund balance levels, which go hand in hand with that. The quote unquote 2% property tax cap, and also taxpayer fatigue were all some of the factors that we included and had to consider when developing the budget. So overall, what are the numbers for 2023-24? The proposed budget is $102,048,891, which is a budget increase of 2.77% and a tax levy increase of 2.85%, which is at the tax levy limit that we have calculated. As mentioned before, and on the screen is a 3-part component budget summary. The administrative, which is the day-to-day, the operational side of matters, you see at 94378 million, or about a 2.85 increase. The program, which is the teaching staff, the aides, paraprofessionals, special ed, which is obviously the largest part of the budget, is just over 75.5 million, or 2.33% over last year. And our capital side of the budget, which is 17 million, you see that as 4.7% of an increase. Primarily due is that we do have new debt service coming on in the 23-24 school year. So that's one of the drivers in that particular category. On the expenditure side, what are some of the things that we look at? Sustaining and expanding instructional support programs, preservation of current staffing level, and additional staffing in some key areas, support and expansion of the UPK program, which is one of the goals that we set out and will hopefully be very successful toward. The continued commitment and the use of technology and the investment in technology, using the budget for repurposing resources while focusing on the academic building and curricular priorities, to what Dr. Ferris just mentioned. Cost containment also resulted in the spending increase of $2,895,299, or 2.92%.
I did want to point out that the health increase was about $1.1 million.
Yes, at the time that was calculated, I'll get into that. Yes. So looking at the tax rate for the last 7 years. So just to kind of go over this, when we propose a tax rate, we go out to the community in May, and this is the proposed tax rate. Sometime in the late summer, early fall, we have a calculation sent to us by the town of Islip, and the tax rate can shift. And as you see over time, over the last few years, that has been the case. Going back to 2021, the proposed tax increase was 1.99%. It was calculated based on assessed value and also use of reserves at 1.23%. Same thing happened the following year. Last year, we had a proposed tax rate of 1.72, and if you remember, we had a big shift in assessed value from the homestead to the non-homestead, which resulted in a negative 0.12% tax decrease. I can't predict what's going to happen 4 months from now, but if the trend continues, there is a possibility that 2.85% will be lower. Other factors related to the above, we do not have any reports of fiscal stress. That is a report that we get from the state controller. There's 9 consecutive years of that. Well-managed fund balance and reserves that greatly helps stabilize our tax rate, which does provide the needed relief to the community and creates the sustainability of our instructional program opportunities. And that's just the representation, similar to other slides that you've seen over the last few months. Next part, our enrollment projections. We did present this earlier in the school year, and as you see what our current enrollment is, and over the next 10 years, what we projected to be. Summarize, the district enrollment since 2012 has been decreased by 581 students, or 18.2%, mostly in the K-5 grade configuration. The middle school had a smaller loss of 142, and the high school lost 162. That's over the last 10 years. Over the next 10 years, the projections are as follows, and you see below 50 students from K through 5, 52 if you include the pre-K section. Middle school, 44 students, and then the high school, 149 students. Again, that's over the next 10 years. So a combined loss of 243 students, or 9.33%. So all that aside, let's look at some of the accolades. Where does our budget lead? And some of the student and staff successes for the current school year. 25 AP courses currently running, 329 enrolled students and 119 recognized scholars, dual enrollment in several colleges and universities. At the high school, they're piloting a building-wide character education program. There's a STEM class over at Sayville Middle School. They placed 3rd in the regional competition. Future City Regional Award winners, and we also do have a very robust RTI and problem-solving teams throughout the district. And you see the other bullets, our SEL program, our athletic distinctions. And the whole purpose is preservation of our rich curricular programs, our continuation of our staff development initiatives, and opportunities for all. And as seen above and seen throughout the buildings, it's measured by our performance, by our student successes. On the facility side, our custodial, grounds maintenance, and office support staff are the ones who make our buildings work every day, that turn the lights on. We're responsible for preservation of our district-wide facilities, our buildings, lots, fields, turf, mechanical systems. We operate under a building condition survey. It allows us to prioritize and make us aware of the areas that need attention. It facilitates the connection between conducive and welcoming environment throughout the district, and the learning opportunities that exist. Student accommodations, flexibility. With our buildings and grounds configuration and their creativity, redesign of existing spaces for UPK, which began last year at Lincoln Avenue, and the expansion that will be coming next year. Ability for continued community use of district facilities. We do have an existing energy performance contract, and we're looking into another, and the reinvestment of savings into energy saving opportunities and maintenance projects. And on the instructional program, as you see here, 81% of our Sayville graduates last year enrolled in a 4-year college, which was the highest ever. 95% went to either a 2- or 4-year institution. And you see the other stats, 42% enrolled in at least one AP course. Our OCAD program had 62 students, and over the last 12 years, all ICT students graduated on time with their respective appointment.
So Sam, just to clarify, things are getting better and better academically in Sayville over the last couple of years.
Yes.
Great.
Further to that point, the elementary and middle school continued implementation of Teachers College, differentiated language rich math program with realized student annual growth, bridges in mathematics, a research-based intervention program for both AIS and special ed, moving toward an elementary full day ICT program from 2021. It's a more inclusive model, 21st century library model. Again, the athletic programs, you see some of the other accolades, co-champions in wrestling, our football accomplishments this year, and also our D1 and D2 commitments. Preservation of our rich programs, effective staff development and exceptional opportunities, and extra learning clubs for students focused on a wide range of curricular and other activities. So in summary, before we get into some of the details and the nuts and bolts, the proposed budget is $102,048,891, 2.77% spending increase, 285 on the tax rate increase. It equates to approximately $19 a month, and it is at the property tax level, the calculated property tax levy limit.
And just to clarify, that $19 a month is the typical average homeowner. Some homeowners might see a higher increase and some may see a lower increase.
I should mention that's the number now. As I mentioned in September, when the board adopts the tax rate, that number could change. If the trend does continue, that number would be lower. Graphically, and this is in the budget book, this is a pie chart of school tax dollar expenditures and the percentage breakdown of each. This is the budget summary that you've seen at every single one of the presentations, and we'll get into each of the categories. Broken down, as you see, salaries and fringe benefits are the large chunk of the budget, about 76%. The other 24%, as you see, debt service proceeds, textbooks, transportation, equipment, and our transfer lines. So to go into the first category, 23-24 budgeted benefits, fringe benefits and salaries, we see that 51.2 million and 24.6 million are the two budget lines, so just under 76 million. And as you see some of the staffing, we do have 6 projected retirees, 5 teaching staff, 1 nurse, an additional 0.4 teaching position after restructuring of special class programs, coupled with teacher and aide staffing position reconfiguration. Ultimately, it's maintaining and expanding the 22-23 staffing levels in certain areas within the proposed budget.
I just want to stop for a moment there and talk about, we are adding AIS staff for math, for reading at the elementary levels, a STEAM teacher at the elementary level, and adding a block scheduling at the middle school. But just for the public to understand, we're not actually adding staffing. We're just rearranging the staffing we have, taking advantage of certain opportunities and retirements in some places and maneuvering it to get things that teachers and staff and parents felt we needed. So people might ask, well, look, they're adding all these positions, they're adding money to our budget. The actual answer is no, we're actually repurposing positions that were not being used so that we can use them in areas that parents and staff and families felt that we needed. So I just wanted to kind of make that point. The overall increase in staffing is only 0.4 of a teacher total.
So on the second budget line, with respect to fringe benefits, one of the key areas are our health insurance plans that we offer to district employees. And in December of 2022, Night Shift, the Empire Plan, came out and published rates that nobody had ever seen in their lives before. It was the largest largest in 5 decades. And if you recall, one of the things that I had mentioned is this pretty much would quote unquote beat up the tax cap. The increases at the time, and I use that word strategically, are on the screen. It was projected for the 2023 fiscal year, because Night Shift works on the January through December calendar, was going up 12.5% for the individual plan, which is the minority of employees that enroll in the plan. Majority of employees take the family plan, which was going up nearly 15%. Again, these numbers were unheard of, and that also was coupled with small double-digit increase last year. Not that any double-digit increase should be considered small. About 2 weeks ago, Night Shift issued a publication, it was through a webinar, saying that beginning July 1st, the rates were actually going down for the second half of the year by 2.7% across the board. What that means is every single one of those increases was being reduced by nearly 3%. The majority, there's still double-digit increases, but they're not as dire as they were several months ago. What that also means is come January, when calculations for the 2024 calendar year come into effect, we are very hopeful that any sort of increase would be mitigated in comparison to what you see on the screen that was originally proposed. We do believe that that was a result of a lot of pressure and a lot of revisiting some of the services that they were offering, because quite frankly, 15% on a family plan coupled with the 12% last year is nearly catastrophic. Going back to staffing, as you see the FTEs for each of the categories on the screen, our total FTE budget comes out at 524.27 positions. And again, all of this information is available online, which you can access. Our fringe benefits analysis, the deeper dive into it, you see the 24.6 million and how it's broken down. Again, the majority does come in health insurance at 14.5 million, and the retirement system and social security contributions are virtually equal, making up the second and third most within that budget code. Debt service, as you see, we do have an increase. That increase is primarily due to the first payment of our upcoming roof projects, which is slated to kick off this summer. And you see our district bond rating, which we've maintained since 2016. Graphically, you see that they're relatively in line. There hasn't been too many changes over the last 5 years. And again, a slide you've seen me present many a times. A line chart of our debt service and our remaining debt service over the next 13 years. Managing debt service, what is the purpose of it? Maintaining debt service expenditure levels over future years allows for the upkeep of district infrastructure. It allows budget expenses without adding additional burden to the tax rate. Filling the gap when we have decreasing debt has a positive effect on the tax cap. Decreasing debt drives the tax cap percentage down. And building aid, which is the amount of money we receive in state aid for any approved capital expenses, stands at just under 69%. So for every dollar that we spend on a capital expense, we get back 69 cents on that dollar. Contractual expenditures, one of the larger categories, are our general insurance, special projects, plant operations, attorneys, auditors, professional services, travel, postage, rentals, dues, fees, officials, etc. As you see, it comes out to $6.45 million for the coming year. That's in the third column, change of about 424,000. That also includes, by the way, special ed and regular post expenditures. As you see graphically, it has gone up slightly, but you don't see very large changes over the 5-year period. BOCE is another large expense that we do account for. We are seeing a slight decrease, about 4% coming up. We have a cost-effective and value-added approach to providing special ed services through our different mechanisms. BOCE services either normally generate either BOCE's aid or expenditure-driven aid, such as high-cost aid or transportation aid, depending on the service provided. For the 22-23 school year, the current year that we're in, we expect 1.41 million, and next year 1.515 million, only because the expenditures in the current year were a bit higher. So what does some of that aid and what do some of those expenses entail? General, administrative, and rental. All the buildings that they rent, every district does have a share that they pay into. Instructional and occupational ed, special education, which is the largest expense, and transportation expenses as well to BOCES. All of that generates BOCES aid, and as you see on the screen, that's the breakdown of how it's about. Textbook and workbooks, the budget is flat, and as you see there, those are the purposes of that textbook code. It's not just for textbooks. We are allowed to purchase Chromebooks and ebooks from there, as well as some compatible software and reading and writing libraries. Transportation, another very big expense and another subject of a lot of discussion throughout the state, especially for some of the forthcoming initiatives. We currently contract with Suffolk Transportation for all of our bus services. We did receive RFPs for those services in the 2021 school year. We do have a 5-year contract that was awarded to Suffolk. Next year would be year 4 of 5. The benefits of that, it does provide the district with cost predictability and continuity of service. For the current protocols, this is again something that we brought up several months ago. The proper health and safety while riding the bus at all times, including bus stops. That includes, etiquette and also, what to do in certain situations. Regular disinfecting and sanitizing of our buses. Masks are optional for students while riding the bus, and we continue to follow any updated and federal state transportation guidelines. Some facts: we currently transport 1,710 students, 18 large buses, 19.5 vans. We also transport 18 special ed students to 10 out-of-district schools, 15 private parochial students to 5 schools, and we do continue our 3 bus drills per year. So I'm just going to put up some of the statistics on here and just highlight that right now the average cost of a large bus is about $97,000. That will cross over into the $100,000 threshold next year. These are expenses that unfortunately are contractually bound, and it's not something germane to Sayville. It is actually something across Long Island, and in several other districts, that cost is actually a lot higher. And just to show that the 5-year contract with built-in increases was 3.3% in January, the CPI was trending at 6.4. It is a little bit lower, but you do see the variances there. Again, one of the other items brought up was universal transportation. What does that entail? Bullet points are on there. We do have to adhere to certain mileage limits. Adding any sort of universal busing initiative would add a minimum of just under 1.36 million to the budget, because we would have to put at least 14 buses onto the fleet. And you see the calculations here as for the tax levy limit. Decreasing the mileage limits also reduces transportation aid, which is something that is vital to the district and we do rely on. It's also contingent on staffing and equipment from transportation and the bus company. As you probably heard, finding bus drivers or any sort of staff has become a very, very difficult task all around. And also traffic, bus stop entry and exit concerns, especially now with the stop arm cameras, which are photographing anyone who passes by. It is meant as a safety measure, but the increased amount of traffic in buses also increases the amount of incidents of those stop arms coming out. As you see graphically, this is what transportation looks like over the last 5 years. Our district-wide equipment code, we're looking at a slight increase in equipment by about $7,000. And you see the breakdown of each area and of expense. We categorize any sort of equipment for the district as a purchase of an item that's over $1,000. And as you see, the trend is relatively stable over the last 5 years as well. Okay, transfers. Transfer the capital and the special aid funds. If you recall, last year we did propose during the budget process bathroom renovations at Lincoln Avenue. There were 20 bathrooms that we were successfully able to complete. And if you recall, also phase 2 would include Sunrise Drive, and phase 3 would include Cherry Avenue. Next year, we actually have to split Sunrise Drive due to the volume of bathrooms that do need to be renovated. Phase 1 would entail 17 bathrooms. And then in the 2024-25 school year, the proposal would be completing Sunrise Drive and then working on Cherry Avenue. Cherry Avenue we can do in one shot. Transfer to special aid, that represents the district's cost share of the special ed summer program and other related special education programs. As you see the budget amounts up there for the 2023-24 school year, they are unchanged from the prior year. So that covers the expense side. Now to look at the revenue side. What were some of the factors into that for developing this current budget? We have a slight increase in revenues for the upcoming school year. Foundation aid, which is the main source of aid from the state, continued increase by the minimum percentage due to a settlement of the education rights lawsuit at the end of 2021. The state did rely on federal stimulus monies to close their deficit. As to what they plan on doing after next year remains to be seen. In draft 1 of the proposed revenue budget, we increased state aid by just under 241,000. Increase in other income, 610,000. We continue to use purposeful fund balance and reserves to offset limited and decreasing revenues to sustain program opportunities and to stay within the tax cap of 2.85%. Overall, just under 6 million is being appropriated from fund balance and reserves. And as mentioned before, that allows us to have a tax rate of 2.85% or an average annual increase of $228. Highlights of the executive budget proposal. The legislative budget proposal was also just passed with not a huge effect on Sayville, but for other districts there is the continued funding of foundation aid with the state commitment to fully fund over the next 2 years. The state did spend just under $35 billion in state aid on education. Our expense-based aids, formula-driven increases, and UPK aid at the time was 160.6 million. There was an additional increase to that. We are the beneficiary of that increase from the executive budget, but not from the legislative budget. And you see under the highlights, future instructional supports, the income cap, progress report on zero emission buses, supporting mental health clinics, annual reporting, the School level expenditure reporting luckily has been taken off the table. It's something that is a big time saver for school districts. And over the next 2 years, competitive funding for school districts, both youth and community college to develop strategic workforce plans so students can go from high school into the workforce. Graphically represented, these are your school tax dollar revenues and how they shape up. The majority revenue source in Sayville does come from property taxes, just under 63%. Our investment income did go up significantly. That is a result of rising interest rates, as they do affect everything from the purchase of a car or a home. We are the beneficiaries that our monies that we do receive, tax monies and otherwise. The applied interest on there has put us in a much better position than, quite frankly, the last 13 years. State aid, as you see, 100%, and the remaining areas round out the revenue sources for the district. Chart-wise, as you see, the increase over 2022-23 and the estimated school tax rate from 22-23 to next year. Again, these are preliminary estimates. They will be subject to change as we receive our final assessed valuations from the town of Islip, and that will be around tax rate schedule. Again, representation of the previous slides. You see this broken down. Again, this is available on the website. You see that the total state aid and other income comes out to just under 32.5 million. Our fund balance committals for next year, as you see, are appropriated. How much we're using from this year's budget to offset next year. Our appropriated committed fund balance, that is a result of a lawsuit that was settled a few years ago for the health insurance consortium that Sayville was a part of. Our ERS, TRS, unemployment, workers' comp, library debt service, and bonded debt reserves, all brought together along with our property tax revenue, comes out to the $102 million number at the bottom. This is just the standard filing that we have to provide the state, our reserves, our status, our estimated uses, and our estimated balances. And the contingency budget, as mentioned at the last budget presentation. What are the elements? School district residents will vote on the proposed budget a week from today on May 16, 2023. Should the budget fail, the board has the option of putting up the same budget, a revised budget, vote for a revote that would be held on June 20th, by June 20th, 2023, or automatically adopt a contingent budget. Should the budget fail twice, that is the first vote on May 16th or the revote in any capacity by June 20th, 2023, the district must adopt a contingent budget with a 0% increase on the current tax levy. That is the tax levy of the 2022-23 school year. So the question is, what's a contingent budget? It only contains the legal expenditures authorized by statute and expenditures that maintain educational programs that preserve property, maintain the health and safety of students and staff. It would include reductions in staffing, programs, capital items, and non-contingent items that would include the following on the screen. Spending limits, if it does fail twice, as I said, it has the next year's tax levy remains the same. And we also have to adhere by an administrative cap, which means that administrative expenses in 2023-24 cannot exceed last year's number, last year's percentage, which is just under 12%, as you see on the screen. So in summary, what would we have to do? The administrative budget would have to go down by $72,000. The program budget would go down by just under $621,000, and the capital side of the budget would have to also be reduced by just under $1.12 million. So a total program and support reduction amount of $1.811 million would have to be taken out of the budget should the budget fail twice and the district adopt a 0% budget from last year. And just to kind of go over the numbers, what would that look like from our fund balances and reserves? And again, all of this is available on the district website. And finally, one of the items that we are also proposing this year is the capital reserve fund. And just to go over the details, what is a capital reserve fund? It is a separate fund, separate from the general fund that would be available for funding project costs for which bonds may be issued. Some of the examples are on the screen here. Annual appropriations to fund the reserves are further authorized by the voters. Funds may not be expended without voter approval. This is key. You cannot undertake a project from a capital reserve unless the voters approve it. It has to be on a ballot and it has to have a 50+1 majority. Proposition to use these funds must be specific to a set of projects. They have to be clearly laid out as to what they are and where they are and how much the projected amount will be. And funds may be invested according with section 11, in accordance with section 11 of general municipal law. So key points from the capital reserve fund that is being proposed, as I mentioned, what it's for, the district-wide renovation and reconstruction projects. Existing budget monies would be used to capitalize the new fund. So if there's any surplus that the board deems can be put into this reserve fund, that's what they would vote on at the end of the school year, at the end of the audit, that is. The fund could be used for myriad capital projects, such as the redesign of classrooms, such as STEAM labs, science labs, theater and stage lighting, windows, doors, boilers, electric, plumbing, masonry work, and other facility improvements. Again, these are not concrete in terms of only that, but those are just some examples. The district would be eligible for state aid for such projects as they are considered capital projects and would be eligible for that 69% return. As mentioned, it would utilize existing budget monies and allow the district to avoid borrowing additional funds through bond issuances and to carry out some short and midterm projects. Passage of this proposition will not increase taxes. And again, these are monies that would be surplus at the end of the school year that the board would vote to move into that fund for expenditure in the future years.
So I just want to kind of jump in here for a moment and talk about the capital reserve, just to our community and to the people who are watching at home. The concept is this: we have classrooms and spaces in our building that can be improved upon. Our science labs, our STEAM labs, our business center at the high school, our robotics and engineering labs. Some of the labs, for example, the high school, are original labs from 1976. The faucets don't work. The cabinets are falling off. They just need to be replaced, but we can't afford to do that within the context of the budget every year to make up that ground. Nor do we want to go to a bond for that stuff because we pay interest on the bond. So the concept is that at the end of a year, when there's monies that's gone unspent because we haven't had emergencies or other contingencies we needed, we can take that money, put it in the reserve. It's already taxed money, so there's no increase in the taxes. It can grow in interest. Now the interest rates are 4%. Any money we put into the reserve grows at 4%, unlike a bond where you pay 4% interest on it. And every dollar we spend, we get 68 cents back from the state. So if we were to spend $1 million out of that fund on science labs for our middle school, for example, we would get $680,000 back from New York State. So it's a middle ground way to improve upon the facilities for our kids without increasing taxes and taking advantage of some of the laws that exist to support us in getting money back. So that's kind of the approach. So what we're asking the community for is not any specific spending. It's just, do the Board of Education have your permission to open up a reserve so that if at the end of a year, when they have money left over that has not been spent on contingencies, can they legally put that into that fund and begin to create what would be a savings account to spend on specific things for improving instructional spaces for our students. That also includes theater spaces like the middle school theater, the high school theater, and the small school theater, which right now need significant upgrades to their lighting and sound systems, which are about 40 years old. So our kids deserve the very best. This is what was put into the parent surveys, that they want to see these spaces improved. This was in our teacher surveys, that they want to have the tools they need to teach 21st century learning skills. And so this is a way to kind of set aside funding for that without increasing taxes, without taking out a bond, and taking advantage of the laws to get as much money back for our kids. Thanks.
Do those capital projects have to be each one specific?
Yeah, so once the money is kind of accumulated in the account, every year when we want to spend the money, we'd have to have a second vote to spend the money. So we would say, okay, we've saved up $1 million. We want to do middle school science labs. So in next year's budget vote, we'd have a budget vote as we always do. And then we would have another vote to say, do we have your permission to spend? And we'd have to say the exact amount, $1.1 million on, and then we'd have to spell out everything that would be spent on. 4 science labs, 1 middle school theater lighting setup, and then that would be on the next referendum, and then the community could vote yes or no. So if they vote no, we can't spend the money. If they vote yes, we can. So it actually gives more control to the taxpayers in terms of what we're spending on each item on. But the first initial vote, which is coming up this year on May 16th, is proposition number 1, which is, do we have your permission to simply open the fund? And that would give the board permission to, at the end of every year, decide on money going in. No money can come out of the vote, that fund, unless we have a second vote. That's the kind of Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to kind of.
The next slide.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So we have SAM language, we have Mark language. The SAM language is very, 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 very important because it's like hits every point legally. The Mark language is, what does this mean for the community?
So what the voters will see at the polls next week is on the screen. And just to clarify, it does look complex. It does look a little intimidating. You see sections of the law and whatever else. But legally, this is what we do have to put forth before the voters. And the summary is at the top, which is be it resolved that the Board of Education authorizes the following proposition, is that the district would establish a capital reserve fund and the parameters specific to Sayville to this capital reserve fund would be that it would last or be established for a period of 8 years and would be funded for no more than $10 million. What that means is that the cumulative deposits would not exceed $10 million. It's not like put in one, take out one, I could put that one back and eventually get it back. It's the number, it's the addition of deposits over time that would equal $10 million. And again, what's listed down below, while done in a legal fashion, indicate the type of work that the funds, that the voters will authorize that fund to undertake. Up next. So, upcoming dates, May 11th, which is on Thursday, last day to register to vote, 3 p.m. at the administration building over in the superintendent's office. May 15th by 4 p.m., the last day to request an absentee ballot in person. May 15th is that Monday. May 16th, a week from today, the annual budget vote and election, 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. at the Old Junior High School. Following the close of the polls at that hour, we will be tabulating and we'll hopefully have the results on both the trustee election, budget, and the results of the capital reserve, as well as the library and the historical society vote as well. You will see that on the ballot. Shall I introduce? Sure.
Okay, hi, everybody. My name is Roy Fedlin. I'm the president of the Sayville Historical Society. And as you see from our budget there, somebody need to get out there and I'll come back to it. I don't know if you remember Linda Conran. She used to do the presentations here. Well, she moved. So we have
history now, right?
She's history, so we have no more Linda Conran. And we found it necessary at that point to hire an archivist. So you'll see the difference in our budget. The only difference here is that we've increased it by $4,800 because we felt the need for an archivist. Linda did that for 20 plus years as a volunteer. So now we have a professional archivist and he is organizing and inventorying our collection. What you don't see is there is a staff problem that we're having now, is everybody's having, and that's the minimum wage. We have an office manager and she had a good budget, but now she's minimum wage. So we found it necessary to increase her budget. The endowment, we do have an endowment fund, which in the last few years has made almost nothing. We're allowed to use the interest, but not the principal. However, this year, as Dr. Burgess mentioned, we can get 4%. So we have some of that $4,800 will be coming from interest that we've been generating. We've been digitizing our collection and it will with CW Post, that is through a grant from the Gardner Foundation for historical societies. So some of that will be available online. You know, to look at some of our collections, our pictures. We have atlases, so you can look up your house in 1909 and see what it looked like. We're also we created a website. So you can go to sayvillehistorical.org and see pictures on our website. And I'm working on getting the second floor of the Edwards Homestead open. It's been closed for many years, and with the archivist's help, I hope to be able to clean that up and have people able to access that again. Our increase is $900. We haven't had an increase in many years, but we felt it necessary to increase our budget, and that's 1.7%. The tax rate remains the same. Are there any questions? Thank you very much.
So I want to pause the budget presentation because we have a couple students in the audience who are supposed to do a presentation on on something very important, but hold your questions on the budget. We're going to continue the budget conversation, but we're going to do a slight pause because we have some students who have AP exams tomorrow and we want to get them up here. I just want to say before they come up, one of the highlights of the year for me was watching the Unified Athletics game the other day, where students from Sayville competed against students from another school district in a unified basketball game with some special education students and regular education students. And it was just really one of the most wonderful experiences you'll ever see. The cheering, the crowd was packed, the excitement in the room, the kids scoring baskets. It was just brilliant. And we want to bring up, I want to thank Dr. Cox and Ms. Giganti for kind of coordinating this with our staff, and also some students who are here to kind of speak about it. So I didn't realize they were here tonight, and I think that it's important to get them back home so they can study. So we're just going to pause, do this, celebrate it, and then get back to the numbers talk. So come on up, kids.
Okay, guys, so thank you for having us. I'm so sorry to interrupt the budget. I know how interesting that is.
You're welcome to this. Thank you. You have the rest of the evening.
Just, we have athletes here that, we really are so thankful that they can spread out all of the things that they're doing, at our school. So again, the unified basketball team, has only existed at Sayville High School until this year, and we are so proud to just have brought this to Sayville. Again, it is not something that we have done before, but our athletes, I think, are doing a fantastic job. It is, they'll tell you all about this, but it is just an honor and a joy to be a part of this team with them. So we have Lily Crampton and Dan Willihan. I want to talk about.
Unified basketball promotes social inclusion and joins people with disabilities.
What's that, Lily? We have a PowerPoint.
Can I do it on one there? Do you have a?
They have Sorry, everyone.
It's okay, take your time. So while they're doing this, think about all the questions you have about our budget and what you want to ask us. And we'll be happy to answer them after this presentation.
We have had 2 meetings so far. The against Delport, against PubMed. And so far we are doing fantastic. We have our student academic here. We're doing a fantastic job of being our rebounders, of making sure that we have, enough opportunities to score. We have some fantastic shooters on our team who I think we had one last game scored like 16 out of like 36 points. Which is incredible because these are athletes that don't necessarily have opportunities. So, I just need them to drive. And there they are.
So unified basketball for social inclusion and once people with social disabilities.
So this is our schedule. We played the first two games against Belport and Pat Med. We have a game this Thursday against Connecticut. Anyone would like to come, you're more than welcome. And yeah, so we have the 5 regular season games and playoffs, so hopefully we can make it there and keep it going.
I want to compliment you because I've been watching the game and you're a great point guard. You run the floor, you keep it moving and you get everybody the ball.
Thank you.
Where's the game this Thursday? I'm sorry.
It's at Sayville, at the school. So this was a picture after our first game against Belport. It was a good environment. The crowd was into it, and I think really just to be able to present our teammates with the opportunity to feel the cheer of a crowd and to be able to be out there and competing is more than rewarding. This is how I put it.
It's a great program. Enjoy every practice with all the kids. So fun.
And these are more pictures from the first game. More pictures, yeah, that's basically it. It's good to be part of the team.
I'd like to say, thank you to Dr. Ferris and the Board of Education for allowing us to bring this program to our school district. It truly embodies everything that's good in sport, and really, we get the opportunity to approve it. Mr. Gigante was instrumental in helping make this happen. But we approve it, we stay out of the way, and it's them who make it a reality. So I almost get emotional because it is so rewarding and so exciting. It's you guys that put this together, coaches, athletes, and you make it happen. So I do it. Being on the board, we hear about a lot of good things, and this is probably one I've heard most about lately. And it's great that you provide this opportunity not only to our district, but I stand and I applaud you. I think you're doing a really great job. Thank you so much. Thursday is our next game. We actually at halftime, we're going to be giving out our rings for our Long Island Championship football team and our New York State champion cross country team. So pretty exciting stuff. Thank you.
What time is the game?
4:30 start, halftime should be around 5 o'clock. So let's pack the stands again.
All right, so I think it's time to go home and study for your AP exam. And we want to remind everyone that the Unified Basketball Program is part of our school budget.
Okay.
Sam's just gonna finish up his last slide. It is one.
So a couple of minor things. Thank you, Mr. Fennelman, for the Historical Society budget. Ms. Fowler is here from the library with Ms. Asher, present their budget very shortly. At this point, any questions related to the budgets or the process going forward?
From the board or
So we're gonna start with the core budget from the board. Then later we'll open up to the public, but we want to give them an opportunity for questions on the budget. Then we're gonna have our library presentation as well. Any questions?
No question? Anybody?
I know Roy left, but that's like $900 for like all of Sayville. It's not like for a house, right?
So the tax levy increase for the historical.
Yeah, it's actually $1,000 if you look at the slide.
Oh, sorry.
So it's an increase of what we're asking the tax levy to increase by, or budget itself increased by 4,800. And we're covering that with other funds.
It is due to the size, it is actually a relatively neutral increase from year to year when you look at it. on the
Yeah, I've
expense
actually
side.
been to this process, historical society, and helps clean up that second floor.
Any questions from board members? Any questions from community members specific to the budget?
I want to say, Sam, great job. And our new contingency budget proposal was very good. I think that will be excellent.
Everybody wants to keep.
That was implied after.
Yeah, the capital reserve.
Again, any questions from the community about the
Specific to the budget.
specific to the budget? Yes, please.
Want me to go up or?
Sure.
These are really, I think, for the superintendent, not Sam, because I, I have a pretty good grasp of the budget over the years, so. First, I'd like to ask you guys. Maybe somebody can call the town of Islip, I don't know what road it is, but there's a really big pothole, just. Do you know about it?
No, I don't know about
It's
what's
cool.
specific to the budget.
Okay, maybe. I
We
don't
didn't
know.
budget for potholes, I don't think, but
So I contacted many other districts and not one of them is asking property taxpayers to fund pre-K. My understanding is New York State is funding pre-K. So there seems to be some confusion in Sayville, and I know we already received the state funding amounts. One question is Sayville asking property taxpayers to fund pre-K, unlike any other district? And then if so, or if not, the follow-up question would be, why can't families then know now where they stand?
Sure.
That's one about the budget. The second one is, this is also a little confusing. So I looked over the budget and the numbers like I usually do. And I'd like to know, how are you funding the general fund you're asking voters to approve? It was described in an earlier presentation, and I assume this is so, with excess property tax dollars that you might have at the end of the year, above 4% limit you are permitted to hold on to. Am I correct in that? I don't want to continue.
Not exactly, but
Okay. So how much money is going into that fund if it's approved? If you have excess tax dollars to fund that account, why wasn't it applied to the proposed budget to reduce property taxpayers' burden? And why are you asking then, if you have that money, to go all the way up to the tax cap? When you have extra money to put in an over taxed account, this general fund? So I ask you again, why it isn't, and then why are we all the way up to 2.7 million? I was here for the original budget presentation, maybe it was January, and we were at 1.7 million. And we only needed another 12,000 to cover the insurance increase. And then since then, another million's been added. And so I have the original. I didn't bring it with me, but it's on the site.
Okay.
So I'm curious, like, how are we funding that? If you have extra money, why are we going all the way up to 2.7 million as well? It's a difficult time, so.
okay, so let me answer them in the order that you asked.
Thank you.
Great, so with the universal pre-K, the state gives us about $700,000 of funding for universal pre-K. So that's money that was given to us by the state, but what they've done that makes it kind of difficult is they cap how much you can spend per student at $5,400 per student. So most districts can't afford to hire a teacher and an aide, which is required for a class of 18 students in pre-K, at the price that is at $5,400. So what most districts are doing, which I don't recommend, and I think what Sayville is doing is actually better than other districts, is they hire outside agencies or use nursery schools that are local, and they pay the lower rate, but then kids have to go to different places, and or like Scope could be an example of that. So what Sayville decided to do a couple of years ago was to create a pre-K program where we hire our own teachers, train our own teachers, hire our own aides, and then run the program in the district. So we have control over it, so we can align the curriculum that the kids are learning in the pre-K with what they're heading into for kindergarten. So for example, if you go to 4 different nursery schools, or some kids go to Scope, the kids go to nursery schools that we pay for, they're coming from different places with different skills being taught. And now we wanted our kids, if we're gonna have a pre-K program, to be under the umbrella of our teachers. So what the $5,400 cap does is it allows us to get $97,500 of funding for each section of pre-K. But it costs us about $150,000 to run it in-house. If we chose to run it out of the house, so to speak, let other agencies run it for us, then we probably could do it for the cost of $97,500. It's probably more than that. But so basically, the state is funding about $100,000 of it, $97,500, and we're picking up the $50,000 plus for each additional section. So we have 7 sections. So there is a cost to the district to make it an in-house program. If we chose to make it an out-of-house program and let people go.
Right now it's Scope, who is.
No, right now, we've always been doing it.
Oh,
No,
okay.
we run our own program for the last 3 years now.
Okay, thank you.
So basically, we're adding 3 sections. If the budget passes, we have 134 families signed up. We expect that if the budget passes for the first time ever, we'll have a fully universal pre-K
And how many
program.
students would go to that point? From
All
what the-
all of them.
Well,
Yeah.
What's the figure? I don't even have that.
134, I think, signed up, and we would keep all of them.
Okay, and right now we have what, 72?
75, 76.
Okay, all right, I was under the impression that scope was running, sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
And about the extra.
Yeah, so this is kind of how it works. First of all, we are at, Sam, correct me if I get any of the numbers wrong. Yeah, I'd like to try to kind of give it a shot, just for my own.
I'll sit down. Good luck, Sam. I'd love that.
But I'd like Sam to kind of correct me if I get anything wrong, because he's the numbers guy, I'm the concept guy. So the concept is this, in any given year, you budget a certain amount to run your programs. You have to take into account contingencies. So for example, we budget about $80,000 for snow removal, and that's in the budget. We have to budget a little bit extra in special education because you never know if a student's going to move into the district and require services, or if a child's going to have to go out of district for BOCES placement, which could cost us anywhere from $40,000 to $150,000 per child. So you have to budget and plan for things to happen. We budget a little bit extra just in case we have high enrollment in the kindergarten and there's 22 in a section or 23, then we can split the section, add a teacher and keep the numbers down. So there are places throughout the budget that have contingencies in place in case these things happen. It's the similar to if you were thinking about your house and it cost you $100,000 to run your house, you wouldn't budget exactly $100,000 because you know that something could happen. A pipe could break, a roof could cave in. You need extra money in case those things happen. So we, based on the recommendation of the comptroller, make sure that we have about a 4%, which is what you talked about, in case of excess. At the end of the year, we then look at that 4%, which is more than $2 million. It's about, I think, on $100 million, about 4% would be about $4 million. We are giving $2.8 million back to the taxpayers in the following budget. So this year's budget that we're currently going into includes $2.8 million going back into the next year's budget to kind of bring that down for taxpayers. And that's kind of what you kind of talked about, that concept of bringing it. We did apply $2.8 million back. And again, Sam, correct me if I get any of the
Things to add to that.
Right. But yeah,
the revenue side.
yeah, but that's why then there's things that come in that we don't plan for, like revenue is more than what we had planned for, or less than we planned for, depending on certain factors. So when that money kind of is accumulated, then the Board of Education has to then decide how much do we put into reserves and how much do we give back to the taxpayers. So we decided $2.8 million of that $4 million will go back into taxpayers' pockets and or to pay for the next year's budget. And then about 1 point something, I don't know the exact number, will go into reserves. So we have 5 reserves or so that exist currently. We have a teacher's retirement reserve. We have a ERS reserve for the clerical custodial people. So when they retire and they cash in sick days, we pay out of that. So it doesn't have to, depending if you have a high number of retirees in a given year, it doesn't hit your budget. And you don't want your budget to have to go up and down depending on retirement. So you take the money out of the reserves to pay for that. We have the one I always have trouble with, a workers' comp reserve, so that if somebody hurts themselves on the job and we have to pay for them to get medical, there's $1 million, a couple $1 million in a reserve for that. So the good news is we have healthy reserves, and we could put money into those reserves and keep them healthy, because not only is that good to have in case someone slips and falls and hurt themselves, but it also helps our bond rating and it helps our the interest rates that we get in our rating as a district if we have healthy reserves. The district is simply asking to have another option of a reserve, a 5th reserve that could be used for these capital projects that we're talking about. So they could either take the money that you're talking about at the end and put it into reserves that exist, or which we're going to do, or we can put some money into a proposed capital reserve. So I believe, Stan, we have projected that if there's a capital reserve that is approved by the taxpayers, about $400,000 would go into that reserve, plus or minus some money for this school year, if the board allows it. Or that $400,000 could go into other reserves to keep them healthy as well. So the problem with giving
or unfortunate event, and the $400,000 wouldn't be there.
correct, if something happens and we have to pay for that, something that happened,
But the
we,
community has to vote on anything that comes out of that reserve.
so
And it's
correct.
only for capital projects, so salaries and ongoing expenses can't be paid with that, or is that?
No.
okay? So it's only for capital projects instead of taking a bond, but we're still asking, I'm still having.
Right, so what we're saying is, look, this is the community's decision. This is not us, you guys get to vote on it. Like, if you vote no, then it's no. If you vote yes, then you're giving the board permission at the end of a fiscal cycle to take the money that is, and say, here's going to the budget, $2.8 million. The problem is if you put too much into the budget, of that 4%, let's say we're gonna put all 3 million, all 4 million into that. I know, I'm just saying, if we were to do that, that could be dangerous because to Tom's point, if something happens, you need to be able to cover it. Now you've committed to next year's budget, you can't afford to do it. Yeah. Yeah.
Not questioning that you need that,
Yeah.
because stuff, the boiler goes in the middle of the year, or
Yes.
what have you. What I'm questioning is the additional 10 million you're asking.
Right, so.
Over 8 years, that would be the maximum of deposit allowed. I understand that. That's on average 1.25 million a year divided.
Yeah, and we're not planning on going to that, that's just the cap
That's
maximum.
all, but if we prove it, that's the amount that you're allowed. That's all I'm.
I don't think we'll get there, to be honest with you, I think we'll get to, you know, something. more.
I mean, look, if the economy turns around and we're all rich one day, you know, that'd be wonderful, but I'm just asking,
Yeah,
that's all.
right, no,
I was.
yeah, so that we're asking permission to open the account, if the voters say yes, then
Yeah.
great, if they say no, then no.
Right, I figured if you're asking permission, you have extra funds, because you can't open.
No, we have the same amount of funds we've always had, we're just asking permission to do something different with them at the end of each year.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. And Sam, add any detail that I missed.
This is, I mean, let's put it in different terms. You have an expense side of the budget, and the revenue side of the budget. On the expense side of the budget, sometimes you won't expense everything due to a lot of circumstances. On the revenue side of the budget, sometimes you'll receive additional revenues. For example, this year, we did not expect our interest rates to skyrocket on our tax deposits and other deposits, which, you know, are in excess of 40, 50, 60 million at any given time. That money adds up. When we presented the budget last year and what was approved, those lines are for certain amount. So some of those perturbations, you know, have an effect. So typically in each year, how the budget is structured, yes, the contingencies are in there. You will have less expenses, could have less expenses. The same thing with revenues. You combine that, you have a pot of money. That pot of money also includes a revenue stream from the reserves. If you remember the slides from previous years that have 300,000 from workers' comp, 400,000 from there. All the fixed pot of money, like I just mentioned, expenses minus revenues, that money gets replenished into those reserves so that they don't dwindle. Anything additional from there, the board has the option to exercise putting it into the capital reserve. Specific to what we said to the 400,000, the initial calculation of all those machinations that I just mentioned would leave approximately 400,000 that could be placed in that reserve.
And so this capital fund is basically, the comptroller has their 4%. So this is, it's kind of like a backdoor way of asking us to circumvent.
Let me address the 4%, because this is as much a misnomer as the 2% tax cap. The 4% limit is simply put 4% of your next year's budget that you have separate and aside for what's known as ordinary, non-ordinary contingent expenses. Let's say that the roof caved in, or the floor caved in, or a window blew out. You don't have the money in your budget. You can use that rainy day fund. It's 4%. Let's round this year's budget, this upcoming budget to $100 million. 4% of that is $4 million that we have to decide, and that's been accumulated year after year after year. It's really the difference of 4% of this year and 4% of next year. That's how much gets deposited, if you will, into that 4% fund. That's really what it is. The other reserves are based on controller standards as to how much you need to have in that fund to operate typically for the next 3 years of expense. That's really what it comes down to.
And any other questions, please?
Curious, what happens after 8 years?
Okay, so that's a great question. Assuming there are any monies left over in the fund after 8 years. So really how it's structured is it's $10 million. And if that $10 million is expensed prior to the 8 years, then that's it. The fund is done. If there are any monies after year 8, they have to be returned to the taxpayers. It would be a resolution, it would go to the reserve, to the board to dissolve that, and it would be part of a revenue source, so to speak, that would go back into the budget.
Following year's budget.
Well, it would be accounted for in the year that the reserve would be dissolved.
The 10th year.
Okay.
The ninth year.
The ninth, I'm sorry,
Ninth
ninth
year.
year.
Ninth
But
year.
that's,
Yeah, so again, the provision of that is that the existence of that reserve is for 8 years. So you can move monies out of there by voter approval for use of capital improvements within that 8-year window. After that, it has to go back to the taxpayers.
Sam,
Mhm.
if
you wanted to continue this more than 8 years, would you have to go back to the community
So-
and have another resolution?
So the resolution would be to establish another capital reserve.
Right,
Specific to the language in this proposal is one reserve for the duration of 8 years.
Okay.
No more than 10 million of accumulated deposits.
okay,
If there are any funds left over that you would like to use for other capital purposes, it's advised, especially this is the financial planning needed, that in the year before, year 7, you establish the capital reserve such that if it gets dissolved and the money is there, you deposit it in, let's say, capital reserve 2, such that it can be expended in future years based on the provisions
okay.
of the resolution.
But I also want to point out that you can't spend any money in that capital reserve unless you put it up for a vote again. So let's say it accumulates $1 million in 3 years, and we say, okay, we're gonna redo the 5 science labs in the middle school. And I keep saying the middle school because that's probably the most dire spot we have. Where the theater, the middle school theater, the lights are flickering. So let's say we pick that as the first project. We would have to go out to the community again and say, the district would like to spend $1.2 million on 4 science labs. It'd have to be that specific, like 4 science labs at the middle school and 1 middle school theater. And then the voters would get to say yes or no. So what it does is it gives the voters, I think, more control over that bucket of money than they previously have had when it goes into other reserves without any voting.
And
Plus,
if
don't we
didn't have-
collect interest on that? And we
Yeah.
also get a match from the state?
Yeah, so the money that goes into that reserve, unlike a bond where we pay interest. And again, this will help us in the future to not have big bonds because we'll do this instead, collect interest on the money we invest. And then we get 68 cents on the dollar back from the state in funding. So if we spend $1 million on that project that I just described and the voters approve it, we will get $668,000 back from New York State.
What effect does that have on the tax cap? Because I know like decreasing debt service.
That's a great
right?
question.
So
Okay.
So, any sort of debt service is a tax cap exclusion, which means that the tax cap can be increased by that dollar amount toward the end of the formula in terms of raising taxes. However, right below that is any offsetting state aid that would be received for projects prior to that 68.6% that would offset that. So it's not tax cap neutral, but it's not like you're putting bond projects or capital projects out there and, receiving, paying interest and principal on it. And it can inflate the number. It's offsetting because you can levy the amount needed for those capital projects, those capital payments, but that's also dragged down, offset by the state aid amounts that you receive every year. That's why it's important to maintain one of the slides I had earlier, those debt levels. So you don't have large swings on the tax cap north or south. And some of the times you've seen in Newsday over the last 5 or 6 years, where some districts say their tax levy is 12% or 7%, is because they did have debt that fell off. And they were, building aid that fell off and their tax cap exploded. And obviously, most didn't go to the tax levy limit, but in terms of presenting, you always want to have that stability, an equitable number, an equal number of payments and aid payments coming in, so that it doesn't cause large swings.
And so one of the things we tried to do is we listened to our parents and our families and our staff. They said, we want our spaces to be improved upon. Some of them are very old, not working properly. In fact, not just, there's nothing wrong with an old classroom, but if the things aren't working, the fixtures aren't working, the gas in the science lab isn't working for the chemistry class, you need to fix that stuff. We can't afford to do it in the budget without raising taxes, so we don't want to do that. We don't want to do it in the bond because of the interest rates and the long term. So this is a way to do it without raising taxes, without going out for a bond. It's kind of a middle ground approach to achieving some of our goals over a period of 5 to 7 years.
But in the years going forward, next, say, 7 years, the community, what we have to remain aware of, and as from the board, we need to remain aware of is if we are increasing our funds that we're asking the taxpayers for, just to fund that. Because right now,
Right.
it's difficult right now.
Yeah, we shouldn't be-
have people on, income.
Yeah, we shouldn't, if this allows us to do what we want, we shouldn't be increasing our budget at all, except for mandated expenses. If you look at our
Right.
current budget of $2.8 million
So
increase,
these are just excess is over, say, because I know, they said the electric bill is
Yes.
$100, but the state lets us charge $150 this year. So, and if the electric wasn't that, we have the extra 50 and we can put it in there. That's basically what those funds.
Yes.
Okay,
There's no increase to the budget to get to those.
Right.
right, but we're not, as long as we're not inflating artificially,
Right.
inflating things.
Yeah. I appreciate that, and I appreciate your questions because they help us to clarify. And look, you know, just because our parents said that these are things we want, and our staff said these are things we want, we have a bigger community than just that. So we create it, we put it out there, and then everybody votes, and we do what people say.
Yeah, and but, I mean, you know, there's also that 2.7 million in there, so it's, you know, if we have the extra funds at this time, it's just really difficult. The economy
Yeah,
right
the
now.
2.7 million, though, what I want to kind of say about the 2.7 million, if you really look at our budget. The 2.7 million is basically healthcare, contractual obligations, increased electricity, which was up 13 or 15% on a $500,000 bill. Gas heat, oil heat, increased food prices and inflation. So if you really look at our 2.8 million, it's basically those things happened before we did anything to our program. The things we're doing in our program for kids is really a rearrangement of the things that already exist in our budget.
We're in service industry, so we
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
staff, right?
Yeah,
So,
we do.
but I don't know if you're adding administrators. but, you
Yeah,
know.
so I want to clarify that because I see that on social media and I think it's important to state. We have this exact same number of administrators in this budget as we do right now, as we did in last year's budget, as we did the year before. We have not added, and it keeps coming up, we have not added any administrators. I want to clarify some things about the administration. We had 2 co-administrators of special education, okay? 2, we had a facilitator, Stacy Giganti, who was here earlier, and another administrator who were co-administrators of special education. The staff feedback, when I first got here, there was a whole meeting with the Board of Education, the staff came because they were very upset about something. One of the feedback they gave us was it was confusing because both of them were sharing the job and no one was actually in charge. And so they didn't know who to go to for what, and there was some pitting against like a mommy daddy kind of thing. When we moved forward with that one person, he was no longer working in the district. We made a decision. There were still 2 administrative spots. We just made one the director and one the assistant director so that it was clear to staff who it was. We didn't add any positions. We just rearranged it. No, I just want to clarify this because on social media, there is some stuff out there that says we're adding administrators. The
There
other,
was one that there was a meeting specifically with some RTI or something, or AT, I don't know.
okay, so in the budget, I'm clarifying. That's why I'm glad you're asking the question. So in the budget, so first of all, so there was no increase in administrators. The RTI facilitator,
Yeah.
which we're talking about, is a teacher on assignment, and we posted that as a position in our elementary schools. We said, is there any teachers who currently exist who would like to be on assignment to help facilitate the RTI process at the elementary level? And we're in the process of looking at that. If we don't find someone great, we're not going to fill it, but we would like to find someone great who can help support our teachers, but it's a teaching position, not an administrator.
Okay, thank you. I was administrative.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
That's one in there.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding the budget, please? Okay, thank you. Great questions. Thank you.
I do want to say I appreciate the questions because I think they help to clarify, and I hope it feels like we put that on the wall the other day because we want discussion, collaboration, and community input.
Thank you.
Sam, you have any, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I want to thank the audience for listening to my best sign like voice right now.
I want to take a moment before Sam steps away. Sam,
Back up there, Sam. I think you gotta go back up there.
Sam, go back up there. We're going to recognize you. For a moment.
I'm shy.
You're the last thing, but you're not shy. So I just want to take a moment to recognize Sam Ferris. We spent a year working on this budget and we went over every single number. I mean, and we cut, reduce. Because of the challenges we faced, and still came out with a budget that has programs for kids. And that's because of the work that Sam put into it. Sam is going to be leaving us at the end of the year, taking a position in the Manhasset School District because he wanted to move closer to the city. I don't know why anyone would want to do that,
I
but
have my reasons.
I know you did. But I just want to say we're really proud of the work Sam did. We're really grateful for his time in Sayville. We're going to miss him, and we thank you for your service.
And I want to say there's still time for Sam to change his mind.
All right, next item on the agenda is Margaret's budget, and
I'm pulling it up right now.
Okay, so good evening. I'll make this quick. I'm Jennifer Fowler, Director of the Sayville Library.
And I'm gonna be presenting our proposed budget for the coming fiscal year 23-24. In addition to the budget, the community will also be voting on the position of trustee. We have incumbent Mary Ann Bastian is running unopposed for a 5-year term. So up on the screen, you're going to see some of the highlights of a few of the library service your library provides. For example, just this week, we are hosting the kindergarten registration for the school district, and we'll be hosting pre-K next. The library has over 65 items now in our library of things. So if you're looking to borrow a guitar or a hotspot or lawn sign, we're your place to go. We also provide programs annually, such as document shredding events, flu shot clinics, and other medical programs such as like mammography ban, and we also provide defensive practice. So that's just a few of the highlights that we have on our website. Online learning is an important component of our digital collection. These resources are available to anyone with a valid Sayville library card. And one of our top resources is Brainfuse Help Now, which provides students in the district to online tutors for grades K all the way through college in multiple languages, as in almost virtually every subject area. And those are available in the afternoon to the evening. And again, all you need is your library card. So another one I'll just point out, we do also have resources online for veterans. We have Ancestry, so if you're looking to look at your family, you can use the library and not have to pay for that. And we also have Pronunciator, which is the language learning program. So those are just a few of our online programs that you can pull in our digital collections. So one of the big programs that the library's been working on for the last year is we're a member of the Sustainable Library Initiative. So as you can see, and hopefully this is not unfamiliar to you, some of the projects that we've been working on to create a more sustainable environment for the library and in turn our community. So just last week or two, we've installed a native planting garden, which is right in the front of the library. We've collected over 700 pounds of soft plastic, and thank you. I think the cherry at school was one of, I think they gave us 200 pounds. So because of this, this is the part of the Trex challenge. So we'll be able to get our free bench that will be put out in front of the library. We will continue collecting plastic for the community because it's just such a wonderful thing to see everybody bringing their plastic in. The native garden I just wanted to mention is also part of one of our community partnerships. We received over $3,500 from the Rotary, as well as we have money from the Garden Club and the Friends of the Library to help fund that native planting garden. And I mentioned the plastic. Okay. So some things that are just fresh off the presses is we finally have our makerspace. It was installed last week. So this is located on the adult level, but it will be a space for all ages, from children all the way up to seniors. This is the very next day after installation of the cabinetry. We had a class in there. I think they were making little Yodas or maybe. So it's called the Makery. And this will really work nice hand in hand with the robotics club at the school, that they'll be able to use this week, hopefully. With 3D printing, we'll be teaching sewing classes. Just keep an eye on the newsletter because we're really thrilled with this new space that we finally have it. And we were able to put this together thanks to funding. We got $25,000 in bullet aid from Assemblyman Gandolfo. So we thank him for that. Okay. And then some of you that have come into the library might have seen our new library on wheels, our book trike, I should say. It's called The Navigator. You'll be seeing us out in the community this summer at the farmers market. We'll be doing pop-up story times down by the beach. Important to know that this was not paid for by taxpayers. For people asked, we did get a grant from the Long Island Library Resource Council to fund our library and meals. So we're just doing some bike training with our staff right now. It is an e-assist because it's heavy.
Yeah.
So it does have an e-assist. Okay, so now we're gonna get down to the budget. I just want to read the priorities that were put in place by myself and my administration team in partnership with the Board of Trustees. So our priorities are such: we want to sustain a level of operating hours, expand our online resources and downloadable media, prioritize core services and increase library programming, invest in creative technology, in addition to maintaining public and staff computer systems. We're going to maintain the library building, its infrastructure and grounds, as well as support staff development. So as you can see here, the proposed tax levy is 4.3 million, over 4.1 million of last year. This is an increase of $170,000 over last year. There's many variables that have affected us, not the least of being, what's been mentioned a few times this evening, was the shocking increase in health insurance, really hit us hard. So we do have the same insurance as the school night shift, so we did also are going to incur those expenses. So this equals approximately 94,000 or 2% above the tax cap. We have other revenue that we can count on. This is contingent on hopefully everything works out. We do expect $50,000 approximately in pilot payments, grants and donations. I just will mention the grants are something that the staff works on throughout the year to bring unique services to the community, and donations. We will take money from anyone. But we are so lucky to have the Friends of the Library who have been such a supporter and in raising money for us. So on the flip side, the expenditures in our budget plan will be increased funding for digital content this year, and we still have, when I looked at this number, we still have two more months of statistics to collect. But we have, the community here in Sayville has downloaded 51,000 ebooks and e-audiobooks. We're one of the highest users in the county as far as e-audio, which I love that. So, but always, that number never goes down. We just keep increasing our downloads. Additionally, this budget will support our outreach department. Many of you know Jonathan Pryor. He's the head of this department, and he will continue to work with patrons who are experiencing food insecurity, housing issues, etc. We're all about connecting people to the right resources. And he will also continue working with the community partners on various projects. So he works with all of our community organizations. The Teen Services Department is the place to be if you have not been here yet to the library. It continues to grow leaps and bounds since I took the position over 5 years ago. At this point, we do need more staff in that room, so this budget will allow us to promote one of our part-time librarians to a full-time status, so that we will always have coverage in the room, appropriate MLS librarians to help the students. We'll continue to update our technology, and of course, we do have to meet an obligation of a 2% salary increase as per contractual commitment. Okay, so this budget, the average of all said and done, the average homeowner with a house assessed at 40K will see an annual increase of $25.60 or $2.13 a month. This budget focuses on sustaining an excellent standard of operation that the community deserves. It allows the library to increase public services and programs, support the new makerspace, maintain the building and infrastructure, keep library technology current, and support staff development. And then I'm going to end with a little, it's a very short little movie. It's supposed to have sound. I don't know if that part's going to work, but it's still, you might have seen it on YouTube. But one last thing that I meant to mention earlier, that unfortunately libraries in New York State, were not as fortunate as schools were in receiving aid. We received a 0 increase this year, for state aid and a 0 increase for library construction aid. So these are really important issues as our buildings are aging, to support and to, encourage these programs from the state, from the governor level down, to continue to support public libraries. My email is there, it's very easy. Jennifer@sayvillelibrary.org. You're welcome to come talk to me anytime, call me, email me, and I'll take any questions if there's any.
I just wanted to make a comment that look for members, having been to that library even just today and yesterday for the kindergarten screenings. It's one of the nicest facilities and libraries you'll see around, and to credit to your staff, just there's always something awesome going on at the library. At the multiple levels and then for multiple age groups, and I just want to compliment you and your staff. It's just a wonderful resource for our kids. So thank you.
You expected me to say, one thing is I wanted to just make a comment and ask a question. The last newsletter was awesome. Every newsletter is great. The last newsletter, just graphically, in terms of communicating a lot of information, complex in a very clear graphic. It was excellent. You're welcome.
It took me like 2 days to make that.
Really?
I did.
My wife was like, did you see that? That's really cool. I'm like, I was impressed, but one thing I wanted to ask, and I think it's to help illustrate further some of the things you communicated is, you've been there for 5 years. You, at different times, I've seen you, including in the newsletter, cite increases in programming, like X to Y. Can you, some numbers that are familiar with you, can you just kind of repeat some of those, share some of those? Like we've increased programming 200%. I've heard you cite numbers in meetings before.
Yeah, I don't want to misspeak, so I don't actually have the numbers for me to say, but the newsletter is good, you can go back and see our archive, you can just see. When I started, we were a 9-page newsletter, we had to go to a 12-page newsletter because the increase in programming, we've seen increase in STEAM programming, children's programs. We just added a bunch of evening programs, because we had some requests from the community, teen programs. Now that we're the 6th grade, the incoming 6th graders come to the library. We, I think 150% of young adults in that age signing up for summer reading. So we're a lot more engaged with the school from when I first started. And the numbers are just, we had obviously a dip in the pandemic, but now the numbers are just moving upward and upward. So we're happy to see the attendance in the library is finally starting to come into numbers that we're comfortable with. It was kind of sad in the beginning because it's taking a while, but in the last month, we've seen that number really finally get over 10,000 visitors per month.
Great.
And the programs, I don't have those numbers, but I can get as far as how much we've actually increased over the last 5 years in every category, from children to teen, to adults, to seniors. And also I'll mention, I think it's on that graphic, 400 and plus community group meetings at the library, which is really important for us to be that place for the civic and any other group that needs to have space to go there.
And teen really, when the board started, teen wasn't really.
There was no
separate
teen
department.
librarian when I
So
started
now
5 years ago.
That's just.
Yeah, it was sort of like, go downstairs and ask children's and maybe you'll have something come up. So now we have a designated team with a staff and it's very vibrant. Community service is another huge component of teen services. We did a lot of grab and go craft for them to bring home and kind of other libraries, big libraries like Massive Riches, which is serve a massive community. They call our teen librarian, like, what are you doing? How are you getting this many teens to come and be participants in the library?
Awesome. Good job.
Smaller, I just wanted to congratulate you and your staff and your admin and the board of trustees that you have at the library for just doing such an amazing job at the library.
Thank you.
I have first brought my children there when they were born, when my daughter was born. And we've continued to use the services at the library over and over again. As James mentioned, your last newsletter was amazing. I get so excited when we get it in the mail. But I just want you to know, and I'm sure you know this, but you just created such a wonderful resource for the community. And I want you to know, again, I'm sure you know, but you're just making such wonderful memories and opportunities for the children in Sayville. I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. You know, our goal really is to bring them in when your children are young, babies, and recruiting a lifelong library user is always our goal. So we're continuing to assess and reassess and just encourage that relationship with libraries to carry into the future. So thank you.
You're doing a great job at that.
Thank you.
I just want to reiterate exactly the same as James and Kelly. So he uses the library quite often and has been in many civic meetings over the last 5 years there. It's become harder and harder to actually get ourselves penciled in because there's like a competition for who actually uses the library. And that's such a kudos. It's such a place where there's things going on, there's learning going on. Jonathan comes to our meetings every month and shares all of the services that are going on for people in need to with you know, whether it's social work or mental health or partnership with Northwell and everything that's going on in your teen center. And we were just there. We all picked up garbage up on Lakeland Avenue together a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, absolutely. Thank you to all of you, and just keep it going.
Thank you.
I'll say that I was doing some research on my house and with the fire maps they have at the library, I was able to trace it back to 1915. And then even with other research and stuff, get it all the way back to 1850. You know, between the Historical Society, Union Cemetery and stuff like that, trying to find different information. But what was funny was when I was there, then I was leaving, that seed catalog that you have
Yeah.
caught
That's
my eye.
cool, yeah.
So I have stuff now in the garden. I'm
That's
curious to see how it comes.
You-
I'll have to share it with the state.
We just like.
So next meeting, top rating tomatoes.
Yeah.
Dive questions, and we have such a great relationship with Royan Historical Society. We have they have a display case at the library, and we just love doing those, you know, those like real librarian questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Question?
Not yet.
Oh, not the library?
No, right?
About the library, yeah.
No,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Sorry,
So-
go ahead.
Okay, so this is actually the library in the school district, but as well. So I have a commercial property tax bill on my phone. And I don't know if the community is aware or if the financial planners of the different, you know, municipalities, the school library are aware. But last year, so my home got, I think, a tax increase from the school or a minus, it was maybe a minus 0.01. But a commercial property from the school got an increase of 9.3%. And which are business properties, and the library last year was 9.7. So I don't think we get those figures, I think since September or something, or I don't know who influences the figures on our businesses, the increases, but maybe people could work on that so that more is shared with residents. It's really difficult for many businesses nowadays, and that's a big increase because they also pay 75% of their total tax bill goes to the school, not the 75%. And many of them, of course, aren't using the school, although of course employees come from the school, but they benefit from it, but it is a big increase compared to a homeowner's increase. So I don't know what goes into the difference in the bigger homestead and non-homestead, but I'm just advocating for a commercial property tax and therefore the businesses who have to pay those increases.
Thank you.
That's just the last part of my report is just the announcement of when things are. So we have a registration day, May 11th, the budget vote 7 to 9 p.m., May 16th. Annual meeting approximately 9:15 at the old junior high school to kind of register the vote. All I want to say to the families and community members is, you know, one of the most democratic things you can do and teach your children is to voice your thoughts about things through the vote, the local vote. And we encourage you to get out there and vote. Whatever your heart and mind tells you to do, that's up to you, but please come out and vote.
Thank you. I know we don't have a board discussion on agenda tonight, but I do have one item. I know our last board meeting, we spoke about sending a letter of thanks to Jared Apple's office, as well as Alexis Wax's office for expediting a roofing project. Sam and I put a letter together. I know Shane want to share with the board, so we just like to share with the board so we can send out and thank them. And the chances are not listening at home, but I would like to publicly thank Dr. Jerry Cadapo's office as well as Alexis White's office for expediting our roofing project. We were number 100 on the list of projects that were up at SED. And due to their advocacy for Sayville, we got pushed up to number 1, which is gonna allow us to vote on the opening bids on Thursday as well. So it's thank you, Jared, and thank you, Alexis. And that's what I just take a quick look at the letter. I think it's just does what it needs to do. Good. Okay. Next item on the agenda tonight is a public session. Can I just see a show of hands? How many people want to speak tonight? Okay, that's
You have one question from viewers at home.
okay. Go ahead. You want to read it?
Sure.
TV show.
Is my Bob Walker microphone on.
I just love hearing your voice on the mic. though.
And is there a question? Come on down.
Next contestant on the voice. So the question is about UPK, and we had some discussion about it, and I could have just answered it online, but I think it was important to share publicly so everybody's aware. The question is, would all of the UPK students be housed at Lincoln Avenue this coming year or split amongst the elementary school?
That's a great question. I think it's a good question to answer publicly. So what we've done is we've created 7 sections of UPK for next year if the budget passes, so that all parents who wanted UPK will get it. 2 sections will be at Sunrise Drive, 3 sections will be at Lincoln Avenue, and 2 sections will be at Cherry. And what that does is, while we can promise every kid a spot, about 95% of our kids will get to go to their home school if they'd like to. If they would like aftercare through scope, after school or before school, that program is going to be housed at Lincoln. So they would have to choose the Lincoln site to get the aftercare. And that might change where they go. But most of our parents will get to go to the school where their homeschool is, so they can go pre-K through 5 in their school. Thank you. Okay, let's go.
Next time. Next item on the agenda tonight is approval of minutes of May 4th. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Second,
Second.
discussion. All those in favor? Motion carried. Recommended action finance. Could I call 9-1 to 9-7, please?
Motion.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Motion carried. New business personnel, could I call 10-1 to 10-3?
Motion.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Motion carried.
The same.
Did I just, I'm sorry, did 10-1.
Yeah.
Confuse myself more. Could I have a motion, new business other, 11-1 to 11-3? I need a motion, please. Discussion.
Yes.
Policy.
Policy.
Okay, policy, we're talking, 11-2?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, please.
So the first thing I wanted to say, I'm not sure if everyone at home or in the audience knows this, but the red, if you're looking at this policy, the recommendations written in red are recommendations from the New York State School Board Association. Am I right with that?
Correct.
Okay, so those are not that's what they're recommending the policy.
And our attorney actually also did use the policy with me as well, based on their.
So he confirmed with the red, but we don't
Because
actually,
they're specific to the law. You have to ask them.
that language is specific to the law,
Like those are the protected classes, so that's why it's in there.
but it's named above as well, so
Mhm.
it's actually repeated.
Mhm.
Does it have to be redundant?
The way he put it, like it is.
Just, I'm talking the red, the new red part.
The parts of the attorney went over it with administration. So.
Yeah.
It goes, it has to do with. the-
If you're gonna talk, just put the microphone on so everyone can hear.
So my understanding is that the added, classes, and what you wanna call them, or that are being added, are what was being added through either the EOC, or when they made changes to the state laws, they increased who would be protected under the discrimination and the harassment laws.
That was my understanding from legal counsel.
And these are the, I don't know what they call them, I think they call them classes, or that are
Protected classes.
protected classes, that's it, right? That are actually stated in the law.
Yeah, I think our belief in Sayville is that all people are going to be protected in anti-bullying, anti-harassment, and anti-everything. So when we, like, you know, in my old middle school, we said everyone matters, everyone cares, that everyone learns. So we believe that everyone should be protected, but the law requires us to additionally make sure that we protect protected classes. So that list is from New York State's protected class list, which we're required by law to ensure protection. But I would say, like I said last month, Sayville, our bar is way higher than the state, and we believe that all people should be protected.
You have to have all at the end of the sentence too.
It is in there.
There's no discussion. It's just the point.
Just for that point, I don't know, and this is not a question that I can actually answer, but if we add all, if this is the law and we start adding above the law, then if there were to be a legal question, that would be carved out from what is considered by law a protected class.
We could check with legal counsel and see what they suggest.
But basically, if you, I did read this, basically, if you read this, I don't really see anything left out. I think as far as I read it, maybe I missed something, but I don't see anything.
It tries to
left
cover
out.
everything, but there's no such thing as everything unless you say everything.
Unless you say.
You have
all.
to let it-
Or you say all. That's Christine.
But it says, it's,
Right, yeah, I
I
don't
think that's the intent of the law, right? That we protect everybody.
yeah.
correct, but when you start to talk about, I just know this from where, you know, doing my own job. When you start to talk about discrimination and harassment, those are specific legal terms that have legal standards that apply to these classes.
Yes.
So I don't know that we can just add although as much as I would like to, add an overriding all if they're not in the same category protected by law. So because not only does the district have to protect them, but there are other agencies.
Well, you could say, and those protected by law, all and those protected by law.
But these are the ones protected by law. These are the ones from the law.
Those are the law.
So there's no
Although,
addition.
and those protected by law.
No, what's missing?
All and all those protected by law.
What I will
I
do
think
is I
it's a
will
question
bring it
for
to our
law.
legal
It's-
counsel,
yeah.
I'll make sure that they, whatever we do, we have to stay within the framework of the law.
Yeah,
But I would argue that we as Sayville can go above and beyond in our statements that are public statements, but that in the regulations and in the policy, we have to make sure that we're.
right. I think it's just have to be careful where it goes. I don't think
So,
we could just add and everybody else.
Is there is the recommendation that we talk to council before we adopt this to second review?
Yes.
Okay, so let's table it until we get the advice from council.
Very good.
Motion to table,
Motion to table.
all those in favor? Motion to table, thank you. So that's now gonna be tabled, so let me just try to confuse myself here. So I'm gonna call new business other 11-1 and 11-3. Need a motion? Second. Not having discussion, all those in favor? Okay, great, thank you. Good dialogue. I need to go to executive session to finish our conversation that we had earlier. We have to repeat that. Or- Hold
Yeah,
on one
repeat the
second.
statement.
Let me just repeat the statement. Motion to go to executive session, to enter executive sessions to discuss matters leading to the appointment and or employment of a particular person or persons, and to discuss the educational program regarding a particular student. Motion,
Motion.
second, discussion? All in favor? Everybody, have a great evening. Thanks for coming.